In today's video, we're looking at 10 horribly outdated technologies that people are still really using today. And at number 10, it's Windows XP. Despite the fact that Windows XP was released in 2001, it's still used on nearly 30% of all desktop computers in the world. While there wasn't too much of a problem as late as the first half of 2014, Microsoft has since stopped offering support for the system. That means that the software giant is no longer providing security patches and fixes, leaving computers running Windows XP vulnerable to attack. Microsoft has suggested that anyone running the old operating system upgrade to a newer version to negate the risk, but it's not just desktop users that are at risk. What you may not know is that ATMs also have an operating system beneath the bank's own software. There are around 420,000 ATMs in the US, and almost all of them are still running Windows XP, and that puts them at risk too. Many banks are planning to upgrade to Windows 7, but the cost and time required to change each individual machine makes this a slow process. In at number 9, floppy disks. Floppy disks are a relic of the 1980s, when users only had to save a few kilobytes of data. Today, the technology has been replaced by huge hard drives, CDs, USB flash drives, email and cloud storage that allow users to store thousands of gigabytes of information. However, that hasn't stopped floppy disk drives from being in common use. Sony actually sold 12 million units in 2009, and they are still commonly found in stores. The biggest buyers of these disks are businesses that still use old computers that can only accept older storage mediums. Until they upgrade to newer and more expensive hardware, they're stuck using floppy disks. One of the biggest culprits in the United States is the Federal Register. Documents can only be sent to other agencies on certain types of media, and upgrading to a secure email system is too expensive. This leaves government employees having to scan documents, save them to floppy disks, and send them by courier to their destination. Number 8. Dial-up internet. With high-speed internet access offered to users all over the country, it might come as a surprise to learn that there's still a significant number of people still using dial-up. But a study by the Pew Research Internet Project showed that 2% of Americans still use dial-up. That's around 5 million people still using modems to go online, often in rural areas. Another explanation shows that a huge proportion of people who subscribe to AOL's dial-up service don't realize they don't need it. About 75% of subscribers to AOL have broadband as well, but aren't aware that they can cancel their dial-up service and still access the internet. These subscribers amount for up to 80% of AOL's profit, which seems incredibly sketchy. Number 7. Dot matrix printers. Those devices that would print noisily and painfully slowly onto hull-studded paper aren't as rare as you might imagine. First introduced over 40 years ago, they became the standard printer for decades before being replaced by inkjet and laser printers. Despite the new models being in common use, dot matrix printers can still be found in a variety of businesses up and down the US. While they operate much more slowly than their modern counterparts, they do offer some advantages that certain companies require to run smoothly. Their biggest feature is that they handle multi-part forms much more effectively than laser or inkjet printers. As they don't make an impact to put the ink on the paper, they can't imprint on multiple sheets of paper at the same time. Furthermore, dot matrix printers can also print on continuous paper rather than separate sheets. Number 6. VHS tapes. VHS tapes were once the bastion of home entertainment. It was a simpler time when family room shelves were full of the clunky tapes and people would actually go to a store to rent videos. DVD put an end to major film studios putting their movies onto VHS tapes in 2005, and now services like Netflix and Hulu are putting DVDs under pressure. Nevertheless, there is still a large market for VHS tapes. Over 50% of all Americans have a VCR, according to research carried out in 2013, a drop from over 80% in 2005, but still relatively high. Online stores like Amazon and Walmart also still sell blank tapes, suggesting that someone must be buying them. There's also a large community in the United States that still buys and rents VHS tapes for their media needs. The New York Times reported on older immigrants who preferred to watch their shows and movies on the tapes. Number 5. Magnetic stripe bank cards. Most Americans are still probably using magnetic stripe debit and credit cards, which is incredibly outdated compared to the chip and pin method used by most of the rest of the Western world. The magnetic stripe system is far less secure. The large-scale theft of data from Target demonstrated this spectacularly earlier in the year. In the United States, customers who want to purchase something with their card hand it to the cashier, who will swipe it and ask for a signature. The magnetic stripe that allows the card to be swiped is vulnerable to data being stolen very easily. Chip and Pin uses a much safer pin to identify the user, and the cashier never has to touch the card, stopping them from being able to swipe the card in a copying machine. Studies have shown that the embedded chip can help cut fraud by up to 80%. Luckily, both Visa and MasterCard have pledged to introduce the cards to the United States by the end of 2015. Number 4. Phone books. Phone books are something that everyone has delivered to their door, yet with phone numbers able to be retrieved much quicker from a simple online search, they've become obsolete. 7 out of every 10 Americans either never or very rarely use a phone book, making it something that the vast majority of people simply don't need. But in most of the United States and many other countries, they're still delivered to the whole population. According to research carried out by the Iowa Policy Research Organization, stopping the production of phone books would save 5 million trees a year and significantly reduce the cost to dispose of the unwanted books. The research also reports that the vast majority of people do not want a phone book at all, with just 2% of those asked by AT&T saying they would like one delivered. The commonly proposed solution is to have an opt-in program rather than an opt-out. Those that want a phone book can ask for it to be delivered rather than simply forcing the book on everyone. Number 3. Telegrams. Telegrams were the dominant method of communication for over a century before the advent of the telephone and later email, text messages, and instant messaging. They were even responsible for people trying to create shorter and more concise messages, though Victor Hugo may have taken it too far, asking about his latest book sales by telegramming his publisher ? Who simply replied ! Although telegram companies such as Western Union ceased their operations some time ago, there's still a market for the service. The United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom all have their own commercial telegram services. However, they're mainly seen as a way of sending someone a novel or joke message for special events rather than a way to communicate. India operated a large telegram service that sent up to 5,000 messages every day until it shut down in 2013. Number 2. Typewriters. Now that almost everyone has access to a computer of some sort, you might think that typewriters would have been consigned to the attic. That's not entirely true, though. Typewriters are still used by a significant number of writers in various fields. They're useful in areas where an electricity supply may be erratic, such as in India, where court typists use them. Author Will Self revealed that he now writes his first drafts on a typewriter. He claims that it forces the person to think more about what they're writing, as they can't simply delete a sentence and start again. They also offer the ability to write without the distractions of things like Facebook and Twitter. Even more bizarrely, typewriters are seeing something of a revival in their use by government agencies. Both Russia and Germany have discussed using typewriters to help avoid leaks and spying that's made possible with computers and laptops. Number 1. CRT Televisions. The majority of people watching television today will probably be doing so on an LCD or plasma set rather than an older CRT model. There are plenty of good reasons to upgrade, including the fact that CRT TVs are huge and incredibly heavy, taking up lots of room and making them difficult to move. But even with those disadvantages, there's still a market for the bulky television sets. Some consumers in Asia and South America often prefer CRT to plasma and LCD thanks to their low price. They're also favored by some because they're better able to handle multiple resolutions and display color more accurately. The biggest draw is to competitive gamers who find it difficult to use modern televisions due to input lag. CRT TVs generally have a tiny amount of input lag compared to plasma and LCD sets, something that's hugely important in rhythm and fighting games that demand high responsiveness. So I really hope you enjoyed that video, and I'd love to know what you think of it, so please leave a comment below. I'm also going to link over to another video that you might enjoy, so just click on that thumbnail on the screen now, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we put out a new video 7 days a week, and you can also visit us online. Just go to TopTenz.net. Thanks for watching.